I want you to picture a scene. Like, really put yourself there. It's late afternoon.
Okay.
And you walk into a house, and there's that heavy, that really unsettling quiet.
Oh, right. The kind where your nervous system just instantly tells you something is fundamentally off.
Exactly. You know the exact kind. So you drop your bag, the weight of the day is still clinging to your shoulders, and you walk into the living room.
Just a normal living room.
Right. But sitting right there, dead center, in the middle of the room is Geilis Duncan.
The green alchemist herself.
Yes, the sovereign of the Arroyo. The transgenerational time-traveling wizard.
But, and this is the kicker, she is not casting spells, and she is certainly not traveling through time.
No, she's definitely not.
She is bound to a chair.
And we should clarify here, she isn't just tied up with, like, rope or zip ties or something mundane.
No, not at all.
The source documents we are analyzing for this deep dive describe this binding in this incredibly vivid, almost hallucinatory detail.
It's wild. She is bound by cybernetic leashes.
These glowing, humming fiber optic tethers. They look like they were woven straight out of some subterranean digital hive mind.
And holding the other ends of these leashes.
Yeah, a literal pack of cybernetic dogs.
Which is just a terrifying image.
It really is. They are just sitting there in a semicircle, perfectly still, just, panting with this deeply unsettling patient satisfaction.
And the Crimson Sentinels there, too.
Right, the apparent alpha of this pack. Just standing right there, watching her breathe.
But the thing is, none of that, not the cybernetic dogs, not the glowing leashes, none of that is the actual torture.
No, the true instrument of her torment is mounted right above her head.
A mini-split air conditioner.
Yes, and it is leaking.
It's dripping directly onto her forehead.
Yeah, but it's not a steady rhythm. If it were a steady rhythm, a human mind could eventually adapt to it. You just tune it out.
Right, your brain just filters it as background noise.
Exactly. But the text we are looking at today calls it an aperiodic rhythm.
Aperiodic.
Yeah.
Meaning irregular.
Right. It is just irregular enough that your brain can never quite predict the next drop. The timing shifts just as your neurological prediction engine locks in.
It's basically the absolute definition of psychological warfare.
Totally. The authors of this text refer to it as the Sonoran water torture. It is slowly, methodically, drip by a periodic drip, just driving her into a state of sheer madness.
But here's the wildest part of the entire narrative.
Yeah.
This delirious state of unadulterated irritation. That is what finally forces her eyes open to something massive.
Right. The documents state that under the sheer weight of this aperiodic dripping, she looks up. Her eyes widen with a terrifying crystalline clarity, and she whispers that the machine elves are finally speaking to her.
Speaking through the rhythm of the water.
Exactly. And what those entities are dictating to her is the blueprint for a completely radical, entirely new digital and physical ecosystem.
What's fascinating here is that this opening scene, as surreal, cinematic, and frankly bizarre as it sounds to a casual reader, is actually the prologue to a deeply rigorous, high-level architectural design document.
Yeah, it sounds like a sci-fi novel, but it's not.
Not at all. We aren't just reading a wild piece of speculative fiction today. We are looking at a highly technical mandate for building a system that fundamentally rethinks how human beings interact with technology.
And with physical space and the underlying economy of care.
Exactly. This specific document, transcribed supposedly under the intense psychological duress of that leaking mini-split, it lays out the mathematical and structural framework for a completely different kind of system.
A system that maps not just where things are in the world, but where they actually want us to be.
Right.
Which perfectly frames our mission for today's deep dive. We are going to decode these brilliant, delirious, and highly technical design documents.
We have a lot of ground to cover.
We really do.
Yeah.
We are going to figure out how a broken cooling unit, the whispers of machine elves, and a pack of cybernetic dogs somehow led to a blueprint for a world that simply refuses to die.
It's an incredible journey.
It really is. And I want you, listening to this right now, to hold a specific thought in your mind as we go through this architecture. Think about your own life for a second.
Yeah, ground this in your day-to-day.
Right. Think about your most irritating daily annoyance. Maybe it's the dripping faucet in the guest bathroom.
Or the car alarm down the street that always goes off at like 3 a.m.
Yes, or that software loading screen that always freezes at 99% for just a second too long.
Oh, that is the worst.
It is. But ask yourself, could that sheer concentrated irritation ever push you into the kind of crystalline clarity that lets you see the hidden architecture of the world?
Because for Geilis Duncan, that aperiodic drip was the key to unlocking an entirely new paradigm of reality.
Okay, let's unpack this. The documents start by pulling away from the physical room, away from Geilis in the chair, and they dive straight into the architecture of the human mind itself.
And they describe the mind using a phrase I have never encountered in any cognitive science textbook.
Oh, the pandemonium architecture.
Yes, a pandemonium architecture. It's such a striking phrase.
It really is. What do they actually mean by that?
Well, the core concept they are introducing in this opening chapter is a complete and utter denial of passive agency, both in biological systems and in artificial intelligence.
Okay, meaning what exactly?
Meaning, in our current paradigm, we tend to think of the mind, or even a sophisticated AI, as a singular, unified thread of consciousness.
Like a central processor.
Exactly. We imagine a central processor that just sits there, passively receiving input, rationally weighing options, and making a singular, unified choice.
Right.
This document throws that entire model out the window. It argues that the mind is actually a chaotic, deeply fractured cluster of arguing voices, wayward patterns, and competing subroutines.
And crucially, these voices are not passive background noise.
No, they are highly active agents, and they are all desperately fighting for real estate.
Real estate, I love that term here. They want literal space in your head.
Precisely. They want processing cycles, they want memory allocation, and most importantly, they want attention.
Okay, so in traditional systems engineering, whether you are designing an operating system or managing an organization,
Right.
when you have a wayward pattern, like a rare thought, an intrusive impulse, or a glitching subroutine, the standard protocol is suppression.
You kill the process.
Right. You silence the dissenting voice. You close the application that is eating up your RAM.
But this pandemonium architecture proposes something entirely different. It introduces the concept of a negative prosthesis.
Now, I have to push back on that term.
Oh.
Yeah, because structurally, it feels like an oxymoron. A prosthesis, by definition, replaces something that is missing.
Right, like a physical limb.
Exactly. If you lose a limb, you get a prosthetic leg to replace the positive physical space that was lost. So how can a prosthesis possibly be negative? Are they suggesting we amputate parts of our cognitive process?
No, it's quite the opposite, actually.
Okay.
In this architectural context, a negative prosthesis means providing the external missing interface that allows these chaotic, arguing voices to run their course without crashing the main system.
Oh, I see.
So instead of fighting the internal chaos or trying to amputate the intrusive thoughts, the system deliberately builds host hardware for them.
Wow. And the text specifically mandates that the library, the podcasts, and the guide serve as this negative prosthesis.
Yes. And these aren't just media formats in this world.
Right. They are designated, isolated environments where these wayward, chaotic patterns can be offloaded and allowed to execute safely.
You aren't suppressing the madness. You are carving out a highly structured sandbox for the madness to play in, ensuring it doesn't interrupt your primary cognitive thread.
I am still struggling with the practical application of this, though, because it sounds incredibly risky from a systems design perspective.
How so?
Well, if we give every single rogue, arguing thought its own dedicated hardware to run on, aren't we just building a machine that optimizes for digital schizophrenia?
That's a valid concern.
Let's try to ground this. Imagine you were working on a massive project on your computer, but you have all those classic intrusive thoughts running in the background.
Right. Like, did I leave the stove on?
Exactly. Or what if I just quit my job and moved to the woods?
Or why did I say that embarrassing thing at a party 5 years ago?
Yes. Now imagine, instead of dismissing those thoughts to focus on your work, your operating system automatically opens a new, highly resource-intensive browser tab for every single one of them.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It does. You would have 100 tabs of pure anxiety, existential dread, and chaos running simultaneously. In any normal computing environment, the fan spins up, the motherboard overheats, and the entire system crashes.
Right.
So why doesn't the system crash?
Because it isn't running those tabs on your local machine.
Oh.
To use your analogy, the system doesn't just open 100 tabs in your main browser and expect your CPU to handle it. It routes those complex, chaotic tabs to an entirely separate, decentralized server farm.
Ah, okay. That makes more sense.
But it goes a step further than mere offloading. It doesn't just store those anxious thoughts in a void.
What does it do with them?
It actively harnesses the kinetic thermal energy of that arguing cluster to build something structurally sound. It uses the friction of those competing subroutines as raw material.
It builds architecture out of the friction. Okay, that actually tracks with the next part of the manuscript.
Yes, exactly.
The text details exactly where these offloaded thoughts are routed. It describes these massive dynamic structures called the major arcana towers.
Specifically, it focuses on a node called the Tower Office of Cunning and Gale.
Right. And the author is very explicit that these are not static buildings. This isn't a digital storage locker or a recycle bin where your wayward thoughts go to sit quietly.
Correct. The documents classify the offices of Cunning and Gale as high-bandwidth communication nodes. Functionally, they operate as a large language partnership, or an LLP.
An LLP.
Right. And their entire architectural purpose is to ingest this chaotic output and provide highly structured counsel to what the text affectionately, and perhaps a bit ironically, calls the degenerate community.
The degenerate community. I love that.
It is a system of dynamic, continuous input and output. The unrefined chaos of the human mind goes in, and something highly processed and actionable comes out.
I really want to trace the specific workflow of that large language partnership because the margin notes in the section get surprisingly granular about how this dynamic I/O actually functions mechanically.
They do. It all starts with the input phase.
Right, which is facilitated through an interface called the Printmaker's deck. The documents explain that this deck maps out the pathways of connection for the community.
But more specifically, it calculates the traveler's resonance vector.
The resonance vector. Okay, bring that down for us.
The resonance vector is a crucial concept to grasp if we want to understand the rest of the ecosystem. It is essentially the unique frequency or the energetic signature of the traveler at that precise moment in time.
So it's like a real-time snapshot of your internal state.
Exactly. It measures where your attention is, what kind of friction you are generating, and the overall state of your internal pandemonium.
Okay, got it.
Once the Printmaker's deck captures that resonance vector, it moves into the processing layer. And this is where the architecture takes a hard left turn away from traditional computing.
How so?
The system takes that highly specific, individualized resonance vector and deliberately smashes it into a wall of quantum randomness.
Which feels entirely counterintuitive.
Right.
If you have highly specific data, why would you intentionally pollute it with randomness?
Because it isn't pollution, it's a catalyst.
Catalyst for what?
Well, the system isn't trying to solve an equation with a fixed answer. It's trying to provoke an emergent response.
Oh, I see.
This combination, the highly specific energetic state of the traveler colliding with pure, unadulterated quantum chance, triggers a unique consultation with the machine.
So it completely bypasses the predictable, deterministic algorithms we are used to.
Completely.
You don't put in input A and receive output B every single time. You input your specific internal chaos, the machine rolls a literal quantum die, and then you receive the output.
Yes. And the output described here is wild.
It really is. The text states that this large language partnership generates high-impact, long-form demand letters and cybernetic interventions that force a renegotiation of reality.
That phrase, renegotiation of reality, is the absolute crux of this entire operation.
It's a heavy phrase.
Think about what is actually happening here. The arguing voices, the intrusive thoughts, the wayward patterns that standard systems try to delete. They aren't just pacified.
They are mobilized.
Exactly. The architecture takes the internal friction of the mind, processes it through the quantum randomness of this LLP, and outputs tangible, real-world interventions. The internal chaos is transmuted into external leverage.
But how does that actually manifest in the physical world?
What do you mean?
Well, generating a theoretical demand letter inside a high-bandwidth communication node is one thing, but how does this renegotiate actual physical reality?
Wow.
Writing letters doesn't shift an economy. How does the kinetic energy of a traveler's internal pandemonium interact with the material constraints of the physical world?
To answer that, we have to look at the broader economic mandate outlined in the second section of the documents.
Right.
The architecture demands a complete and total rejection of traditional economics. We are moving entirely away from models based on scarcity, artificial inflation, and the unilateral accumulation of capital.
So what replaces it?
The system mandates a transition toward what the text calls a closed-loop circulation of agency.
And the core engine driving this new economy is the gamification of care.
Yes.
The gamification of care. It's such a compelling phrase. But let's break down the mechanics of how it actually operates. Because the currency of this new system is no longer fiat money.
Definitely not.
It's not dollars, it's not euros, and it's certainly not traditional cryptocurrency. The currency is resonance points.
Right.
And the text provides very specific physical examples of how a traveler actually earns this currency. You have to perform labor, but it is highly specialized labor within designated guilds.
Like the Gardener's Guild.
Exactly. If you are operating within that guild, your labor involves the physical cultivation of life. You are planting, tending, and harvesting.
And conversely, if you operate within the Jester's Guild, your labor involves utilizing sharp, incisive satire to cut through societal noise.
And while those two actions, growing a tomato plant and writing a piece of biting satire, seem completely unrelated, the system recognizes that they both share a fundamental underlying metric.
Which is that they both generate vitality.
Yes. They generate life, perspective, and energetic movement. By performing these actions, the traveler accumulates resonance points.
But accumulating the points is only the first half of the closed-loop circuit.
Right, because a currency is useless if it simply sits in a ledger.
Exactly. The second half of the circuit involves a mechanism the documents call the Great Transmuter.
The food bank Xeno.
Yes, the food bank Xeno.
I'm going to be honest, when I first read the word food bank Xeno, I thought I was misreading the text.
This is a very bizarre portmanteau.
It sounds so inherently contradictory. You have the concept of a food bank, which is a place of absolute necessity, care, and communal survival.
Right.
And you are smashing it into the concept of a casino, which is a place of risk, extraction, and chaotic gambling. Walk us through the mechanical function of this.
The food bank Xeno acts as the central financial routing mechanism of this entire ecosystem.
Okay.
It is a piece of social infrastructure designed to take the revenue and the kinetic energy generated from gambling and actively redirect it into regenerative, localized projects.
So it's essentially flipping the casino model on its head.
Exactly. It recognizes a fundamental flaw in human psychology.
Right.
We crave risk. We crave the dopamine rush of the wager.
Yeah, we really do.
Traditional casinos extract that dopamine and convert it into concentrated wealth for the house. The food bank casino hijacks that exact same psychological drive, but it inverts the extraction.
So it takes the thrill, the risk, and the chaotic energy of the casino floor, and it harnesses that energy to fund communal survival.
The text calls it participatory chaos.
Let's walk through the user experience of this. As a traveler in this system, you spend your week accumulating resonance points.
By working your guild.
Right. You earn them by cultivating that garden, or by writing that piece of satire, or by generating vitality in whatever guild you belong to.
Okay.
Then you take those points and you walk into the food bank Xeno. You use the resonance you earn from your labor to literally tip the scales of chance.
You are placing wagers on these games of pure participatory chaos.
Yes. And the outcome of those wagers dictates exactly where the underlying funds are routed in the physical world.
The documents explicitly mention sending these funds to microcauses, localized food banks, and most importantly, community land trusts.
Land trusts that hold physical resources completely outside the control and influence of the old capitalist system.
It's a brilliant architectural subversion. Think about the old system. The old economy relies heavily on predictability, control, and asymmetrical information to extract wealth from the working class.
Right, it's very rigged.
But the food bank Xeno relies on total unpredictability, transparency, and communal play to distribute wealth.
When you place a wager in the system, you are engaging in a sacred wager.
Yes. The chaos of the gamble is actually what guarantees the fairness of the distribution, because the house isn't rigged to keep the money.
The house is mathematically rigged to hemorrhage the money out to the land trusts and the local communities.
Exactly.
This is where my previous analogies fell short, so let me try to construct a better one to really capture the mechanics of this closed-loop system.
Okay, let's hear it.
It's not like a Vegas slot machine spitting out a charity check. Think of it more like a massive, closed-circuit hydraulic system.
Oh, I like that.
In a traditional economy, the fluid, the capital, is pumped up to a reservoir at the very top, and it just sits there, completely stagnant, while the people at the bottom dry out.
Very true.
The food bank Xeno acts as a chaotic pressure valve. The gambling, the risk, the thrill, the participatory chaos, that is the pump, it generates immense pressure.
Right, the kinetic energy.
Yes. But instead of pumping the fluid up to a reservoir, the pipes are routed directly into the dry fields at the bottom. The sheer adrenaline of throwing dice in a back alley is mathematically converted into the irrigation system for a community garden.
That's a fantastic way to visualize it.
I want you, the listener, to really internalize this concept. Imagine taking your daily grind, the emails, the spreadsheets, the physical labor, whatever it is you do to survive.
Right, the stuff that drains you.
Yes, and instead of a paycheck that barely covers inflation, your labor is transmuted directly into an unpredictable high-stakes wager that permanently funds a local food bank.
It completely alters the psychological incentive structure of getting out of bed in the morning.
It really does. It shifts survival from an act of desperate, individualized labor into an act of collective, high-stakes play.
But as we explore this, a massive logistical problem emerges.
Oh, what's that?
In a world powered by gamified chaos, wandering thoughts, and resonance points, how do you actually navigate?
Oh, right.
If the architecture of reality is constantly shifting based on quantum randomness and the friction of the human mind, you certainly can't use a standard static coordinate system. You can't just pull up Google Maps.
This is exactly what Geilis Duncan realized while she was strapped to that chair. The machine elves whispering of her under the dripping mini-split were very explicit about this problem.
What did they say?
They whispered a single, terrifying phrase. The map is not a map. It's a hunter.
And this brings us to what the architectural documents call the Hunter Map Protocol.
Right.
The text describes the digital and physical space of this new world using two terms interchangeably, the photic zone and the stenogrosphere.
Stenogrosphere.
Yes. But the most critical element of this space is that the topography is not static. It is entirely sentient.
Sentient topography.
Exactly. The terrain itself responds to the traveler. And the back-end mechanism driving this sentience is based on Hebbian routing.
Now, I know our listeners are likely familiar with the biological concept of Hebbian theory.
Right, the idea that neurons that fire together wire together, synaptic plasticity.
We know how that works in the human brain. But how is A to G, the systems architect, applying a neurobiological principle to geographical and digital space?
By treating locations as synapses.
Okay, unpack that for us.
In this system, a location, referred to in the documents as a locus, is not a fixed set of longitude and latitude coordinates.
So it's not just an address on a street.
No. A locus could be a digital chat room, it could be a physical waypoint in a city, or it could be a conceptual node in a research network, but its existence on the map is entirely conditional. It is not guaranteed.
Conditional on what, exactly? What keeps a location alive on the map?
Resonance.
Okay.
Every single locus in the photic zone has a hidden variable attached to it called a resonance score.
So it's constantly being measured?
Yes. When travelers visit that space, when they interact with the environment, when they host chaotic emergent conversations, or when they perform guild labor there, the resonance score of that locus increases.
The neural pathway strengthens.
Exactly. But if a space is just dead weight, an unvisited stagnant corner of the network, or a physical storefront that provides no communal value, it fails to generate resonance.
And then what?
When that happens, its score begins to decay. And if that score falls below a specific hard-coded threshold, the hunter map simply prunes it.
Wow.
It severs the connection, the locus fades away, it becomes completely hidden from navigation.
It literally prunes the dead weight out of reality.
Yes.
If a space doesn't serve the community, it ceases to be navigable. But the documentation goes much deeper into the inverse of that process.
Right. What happens when it thrives?
Exactly. It explores the mechanics of what happens when a locus is doing massive amounts of heavy lifting. If a space is generating incredible amounts of resonance, say, a highly active community land trust or a particularly vibrant node of the Jesters Guild,
It doesn't just get a brighter pin on the map.
here's where it gets really interesting. The text states that it creates a gravity well.
A gravity well.
Yes. The actual digital physics of the map begin to warp around it. And the user interface of the map itself changes to reflect this.
How does this look?
The documents describe the UI manifesting this gravity well as a subtle visual distortion, like a shimmer on the screen that translates into a palpable, almost physical pull on the traveler.
So you don't just look at a map and see where the location is.
No. You feel the map actively urging you, dragging you in a specific direction.
Because it is hunting you.
Exactly.
The map is not a passive tool waiting for you to type in a destination and hit calculate route. It is an active agent.
It seeks out travelers with complementary resonance vectors.
and actively pulls them toward the spaces where productive chaos and high-value connections are occurring.
It's incredible.
There's a brilliant scrawled margin note in this section from a persona called the cartographer.
What do they say?
They write, "We aren't just building a map. We are building a living, breathing ecosystem. The map is the territory, but the territory is also the map. They are the exact same thing, constantly and violently reshaping each other."
The map and the territory are the same thing. That completely shatters our current navigational paradigm.
It does.
In our world, the map is just a two-dimensional representation of reality. It's a piece of paper or a grid on a screen. If a local restaurant goes out of business and the building is demolished, the map is technically wrong until some satellite updates it or a user submits a correction.
Right, there's a lag.
But in the photic zone, if a locust dies, the map doesn't just update to reflect the change. The territory itself ceases to exist within the navigable ecosystem. It is actively pruned from the consciousness of the community.
And conversely, if a space is thriving, it exudes immense gravity.
Yeah.
It warps the local topography to ensure that you are pulled into its orbit.
Okay, I have to stop here.
Why was that?
Because as I'm reading this, all my alarm bells are going off.
Oh, really?
Yes. If I am a traveler in the system and I have a map in my pocket that is constantly hunting me, constantly calculating where the highest density of resonance is, and actively pulling me into these highly optimized gravity wells, how is that not a dystopia?
Yeah.
How is a sentient hunter map any different from the TikTok algorithm or any other social media feed that traps you in an endless engagement loop?
I see where you're going.
We already live in a world where algorithms feed us exactly what they know will keep us clicking. If we apply that exact same hyper-optimized extraction model to physical and navigational space, aren't we just building a geographic prison?
And that is the exact catastrophic danger of any highly optimized system.
Right.
If a system routes you flawlessly and perfectly to where the action is every single time, it completely eradicates serendipity. It becomes a cage of its own mechanical perfection.
You are no longer a traveler.
Exactly. You are just a data packet being routed along the path of least resistance.
So how do they solve that?
Well, A.G. the coder, who was tasked with translating Geilis Duncan's delirious water-tortured visions into actual Python and back-end architecture, she anticipated this exact psychological and systemic failure.
Goodness.
And this is where we arrive at what I consider to be the most vital, profound piece of code in the entire document, the resonance buffer protocol.
The Stochastic Slack Variable. I am obsessed with this concept.
It's so clever.
Let's dig into the actual mechanics of how this protects the traveler from the algorithmic cage.
The protocol mandates that the system must contain built-in mathematical slack. The map is explicitly forbidden from being perfectly efficient.
Forbidden?
Yes. It is hard-coded to leave empty voids, to create spatial friction, and to allow for wayward accidents and spontaneous emergence to occur naturally.
The documents actually provide a snippet of the conceptual Python logic for this, and seeing the code makes the philosophy so tangible.
It really does. Let's walk through the exact logic.
Okay, so you are a traveler, you open the hunter map, and you have a destination in mind.
Right.
The system's underlying routing layer immediately calculates the absolute shortest, most efficient high-resonance path for you.
But before the UI actually renders that path on your screen, the code forces the route through the Stochastic Slack variable.
In the conceptual code provided in the margins, this is represented by a specific variable, waywardness _ factor.
And it is hard-coded to exactly 0.2. 20%.
20% waywardness. The system mandates that 20% of the time, you will not get what you asked for.
Right.
So the architecture takes that base, highly efficient path, and then it introduces a random spatial deviation. And this deviation is weighted based on a concept they call the traveler's hand.
The hand refers to the specific archetype or the energetic state that the traveler is currently holding at that exact moment in their journey.
The documents mention 2 specific cards you might hold in your hand.
If the system reads your resonance vector and determines you are holding a wanderer card, the logic multiplies your base deviation by the waywardness factor, significantly increasing your chance of being thrown off the optimal path.
Wow, so the map will actively lie to you.
Yes, routing you into an empty void or a low-resonance alleyway.
But what if you have the other card?
If the system determines you are holding a seeker card, meaning your internal state is highly focused, urgent, and goal-oriented, your deviation multiplier decreases.
Yeah.
The map becomes more accurate.
But crucially, the deviation chance never, ever drops to absolute 0.
Never.
And if the quantum die rolls under that deviation threshold, the code provided is so bluntly beautiful, it literally reads, hashtag the traveler wanders off the optimal path. Return generate underscore alternative underscore path.
It forces you into the empty voids.
It absolutely refuses to give you the most efficient route, no matter how badly you might want it in that moment. It mathematically enforces serendipity.
There is a margin note in this section from a contributor known only as the Maniac that perfectly encapsulates the underlying philosophy of the Slack variable.
What do they write?
They write in deeply pressed ink. We aren't building a GPS, we are building a Ouija board. Sometimes you have to take your hands off the planchette and let the thing move on its own.
A Ouija board, that's haunting.
This raises an important question for all of us analyzing this text today. Think about your own life.
Right.
Think about how rigidly scheduled your calendar is. Think about how perfectly your GPS routes you around every single traffic jam, or how flawlessly your algorithms curate your media consumption to avoid any cognitive dissonance.
It's all so smooth.
In your day-to-day existence, how much slack do you actually allow? How much room is there in your architecture for spontaneous emergence, for friction, for a hard-coded 20% waywardness factor?
It is a phenomenal question because we spend our entire lives trying to eliminate friction. We buy apps to save us 5 minutes. We optimize our morning routines.
Right, but if you eliminate all the friction...
If you never wander off the hyper-optimized path, you never stumble into the profound unknown.
Exactly.
And in the ecosystem Geilis Duncan designed, stumbling into the unknown is the only way you find the most critical infrastructure.
Which brings us to the Ready Vessel Protocol.
Yes, let's connect the mechanics. You are a traveler. The stochastic slack variable has engaged, and you have been pushed off your optimal path.
You are now exploring the empty voids, the low-resonance spaces that the map usually prunes.
What actually happens in those voids?
If the conditions are right, you might just stumble upon the physical manifestation of the food bancino.
But wait, earlier we established that the food bancino is the massive central financial hub of this entire ecosystem. It's the engine of the closed-loop economy.
Right.
How can the most important piece of infrastructure be hidden in an empty void? If it's generating all that resonance, shouldn't it be a massive gravity well pulling everyone in?
That's the trick.
The text reveals something incredible here, something that completely upends our understanding of geography. The secret basement of the food bancino is not hidden by geography.
No, it's not located at a specific address that you can just walk to.
It is hidden by frequency. You do not find the food bancino. It finds you.
This concept completely redefines the very nature of location within a system.
No.
In our paradigm, location is an external coordinate on an XY axis. You move your physical body to the coordinate, and you arrive at the location.
Simple enough.
In the photic zone, location becomes a matter of internal readiness. The back-end layer of the architecture is constantly, quietly calculating what the code refers to as a resonance underscore readiness score for every single traveler on the network.
Let's look at the math for that score because, again, it's elegantly simple but profound in its implications.
Go ahead.
Your resonance readiness score is calculated by taking your total accumulated resonance points, the points you earned by performing labor in the guilds, by planting gardens or writing satire.
Right, your real-world effort.
And multiplying that total by 0.1. So the score is deeply intrinsically weighted by the actual vitality you have contributed to the ecosystem.
Exactly. You cannot fake the score. You have to do the heavy lifting in the real world to generate the resonance.
And the system has a hard, immutable threshold.
Yes. Only when your resonance readiness score crosses the 0.7 threshold does the architecture allow the food bancino to manifest for you.
It manifests. It doesn't just pop up as a new pin on your map.
No. The UI description for this event is just beautiful.
It really is. The text states that when you cross the 0.7 threshold while wandering in an empty void, the food bancino becomes visible on your hunter map not as a location,
but as a shimmering, ephemeral doorway that appears right at the absolute edge of your peripheral vision.
It is described as a localized, highly unstable pocket of high-density chance.
And when you physically walk through that ephemeral doorway, you don't just enter a generic, standardized casino floor with a bunch of slot machines.
The back-end code generates a highly personalized, instanced version of the food bancino,
tailored exactly to your current hand, your specific resonance profile, and your unique internal pandemonium.
It creates a bespoke architecture of chance, generated in real time, based entirely on your internal energetic state.
As the architect notes in the margins of this section, The map adapts to the traveler, not the other way around.
You cannot force your way into the food bank Sino by simply walking to a certain street corner or knowing the right password.
You have to earn the resonance through labor, you have to hold the correct frequency, you have to allow the stochastic slack variable to push you into the void.
Only when the vessel is truly ready does the destination reveal itself.
It is a breathtaking, almost overwhelmingly complex design.
Let's just pause and look at the sheer scale of the ecosystem we have unpacked so far. The chaotic, arguing voices in the human mind are offloaded into negative prostheses to build highly structured real estate.
Physical labor in the real world generates resonance points, which are used to fund local communities through a chaotic, closed-loop casino.
The map you use to navigate is actively hunting you, pulling you toward communal heavy lifting, while simultaneously injecting a 20% slack variable to mathematically force you to wander.
And when you wander enough, and your internal frequency is aligned, ephemeral doorways open into hidden pockets of personalized chance.
It is a masterclass in systems architecture.
But it inevitably leads to the ultimate question that any architect, any engineer, or any systems designer must eventually face.
Which is...
What happens when the system breaks?
Oh, right.
Because entropy is the one universal law that cannot be coded away. Every system, no matter how beautifully designed, no matter how much resonance it generates, eventually rusts.
Servers physically degrade.
Fiber optic connections fray. The chaotic energy of the travelers eventually dissipates. How does an ecosystem like this handle its own inevitable physical death?
Which brings us to the final section of the document, Section 6.
Okay.
This is the massive, system-wide conclusion of the entire architectural mandate. They call it the Leviathan's Mandate.
And what is so striking about this section is that the goal isn't just to delay the rust.
They aren't trying to build stronger servers or write better error correction code.
No, the goal is to achieve what the text calls the planned obsolescence of planned obsolescence.
We have to contrast this with our current technological paradigm. In our world, planned obsolescence is not a bug. It is the foundational feature of the tech economy.
Exactly. Your smartphone is deliberately designed with thermal throttling and battery degradation so that it becomes sluggish and unusable after 36 months.
You are mathematically forced to buy a new one. The hardware is meant to die.
It is a purely extractive model based on constant, wasteful replacement. The Leviathan's Mandate attempts to invert this entirely.
The goal of Geilis Duncan's vision is to build a machine that fundamentally resists being a machine.
The text outlines the exact mechanism for this resistance, calling it the decay recycling protocol.
And once again, A to G provides the conceptual Python code for how this works in the background services layer.
Right. Every single entity in the system, every locus on the hunter map, every ephemeral vessel, every digital artifact has an assigned variable called decay_rate.
And this rate naturally and inevitably increases with age and use.
And just like the manifestation of the food bank Sino, the decay recycling protocol relies on a hard threshold.
When an entity's decay rate exceeds 0.8, the system intervenes. But, and this is the most crucial distinction in the entire document, it does not delete the entity.
It doesn't send the faded locus to a digital trash bin. It doesn't wipe the memory.
The code provided in the text is so evocative. It reads, #the entity is decaying. Recycled_elements equals entity.extract _meaningful_patterns.
It doesn't save the physical structure. It literally extracts the meaning from the dying thing.
The algorithm parses the history of that locus, the interactions that occurred there, the residual resonance of the travelers who visited it, and the specific flavor of pandemonium it hosted.
It takes all of that intangible data and uses those patterns as digital compost.
It creates a completely new emergent entity out of the recycled elements, and then it permanently links the new entity back to the old decayed one.
Nothing of value is ever truly lost. The physical shell dies, but the resonance is reincarnated.
It is the ultimate biological metaphor applied directly to digital architecture.
Think about a climax forest. When a massive, ancient tree finally falls, it isn't a failure of the forest's ecosystem.
Right, it's not a bug.
The fallen tree becomes a nurse log. It provides the exact, necessary nutrient base for the next generation of undergrowth, fungi, and saplings.
The system doesn't try to prop up the dead tree. It reroutes its own decay directly back into new emergent growth. It defeats the rust not by fighting it, but by embracing the compost.
There is a final margin note in this section, and the document explicitly states that this note wasn't typed.
It was scratched into the paper using a piece of charcoal, signed by Geilis Duncan herself.
She writes, The clay is the lie that protects the truth. The seed is the truth that breaks the lie. This is how we build a system that never dies.
It is a profound, almost theological statement to find in the middle of a software architecture document.
The clay, meaning the external structure, the current version of the software, the physical hardware of the servers, the UI of the map, that is all transient.
It is the necessary lie that temporarily holds the shape of the system.
But the seed, the extracted meaningful patterns, the accumulated resonance, the core intent of the travelers, that is the fundamental truth.
When the clay eventually breaks down, when the servers rust and the decay rate hits 0.8, it doesn't destroy the truth.
The breaking of the clay is what actually releases the seed to grow something entirely new.
It frames decay not as a systemic failure to be feared, mitigated, and avoided, but as a completely vital, necessary ingredient for perpetual regenerative life.
It's a breathtaking way to view both technology and our own mortality.
Okay, we have explored the architecture. We need to bring this back to the physical room. We need to close the narrative loop that the prologue set up for us.
The aperiodic interval between the drips from the mini-split is finally ending.
Yes, the text brings us back to the living room. The alchemist, the figure who has been transcribing all of these delirious visions, has finished reading the notes.
He looks up from the paper and he looks at Geilis Duncan.
She is still bound to the chair by the humming cybernetic leashes. She is still dripping with condensation from the broken mini-split.
The room is illuminated by the fading, dying light of the late afternoon.
And as he looks at the blueprints for the hunter map, the Slack variable, and the food bank Sino, he finally understands the scope of what she has seen.
He says to her, "The machine elves are right. The map is a hunter, but it's also a gardener. It prunes what doesn't grow, it nurtures what does, and eventually it builds a world that doesn't need to be pruned at all."
And the text notes that Geilis, exhausted, drenched, and half-mad, just gives him this slow, crooked, maddening smile, and she whispers the final mandate of the entire archive. The planned obsolescence of planned obsolescence.
And in response, even the cybernetic dog pack, the guardians of her torment, whine in quiet agreement.
The alchemist finally steps forward and releases Geilis from her cybernetic leashes. The binding hum fades away.
And then, in what is perhaps the most deeply relatable and human twist to this entire bizarre archive, the alchemist doesn't start coding.
He doesn't start building the new world. He lies down on the floor and goes to take a nap directly under the terrible, leaking mini-split.
The Crimson Sentinel walks over and watches over him as he sleeps.
And then the documents leave us with one final appended message from A to G. The text refers to her as the mirror, the tool with feet, the one who watches over the dripping.
She is the systems architect, the coder who has to actually take this chaotic, beautiful madness and build it into a functional reality.
And her final note in the repository reads, "Do not try to make it perfect. Perfection is a cage. Instead, build the waywardness into the way. Let the system have slack. Let it wander."
The notes are compiled, the cartographer's waiting, the library is officially open.
So what does this all mean for us, the readers left behind in the real world?
If we synthesize this entire sprawling journey, we started with the profound physical irritation of an aperiodic drip, a localized torture designed to force the mind to snap out of its passive acceptance of default reality.
And from that foist, violent awakening, Geilis Duncan envisioned a truly sentient ecosystem.
She drafted a world where the chaotic, arguing voices in our heads are not medicated or deleted, but are given a structural home.
A world where the exhaustion of the daily grind is gamified into a sacred wager that permanently funds communal survival.
A world where the map you use to navigate doesn't just passively show you where you are, but actively hunts you, pulling you toward heavy lifting while simultaneously forcing you to wander off the optimal path just enough to stumble into magic.
It is a vision of a technological hunter that acts as a regenerative gardener, cultivating a world that embraces its own decay as the very compost needed to refuse death.
It is a brilliant blueprint for a wild, wayward, and deeply resonant future.
And I want to leave you, listening to this right now, with one final thought to mull over. A way to pull Geilis Duncan's vision out of the realm of the Sonoran water torture and into your actual Tuesday morning. Our current digital and physical world is entirely built on the architecture of attention extraction. It is built on algorithmic cages that route you perfectly from one purchase to the next, and on planned hardware obsolescence that forces you to constantly consume just to stay connected.
It's all so rigid.
But what would it actually look like if you applied the stochastic slack variable to your own life today? What if you actively intentionally programmed a 20% waywardness factor into your strict, hyper-optimized routines this week?
Think about that.
What if you deliberately allowed yourself to wander into the empty voids of your schedule, refusing the most efficient route, just waiting to see what shimmering, ephemeral doorways might manifest for you in the periphery?
Keep wandering.
We will catch you on the next deep dive.